Hey everyone, welcome back. As usual, you guys know how grateful I am for you guys to tune in to these messages. So love hearing from you. As usual, drop me some comments. Let me know where in the world you're tuning in from. I've got a follow-up message from the last message I did for you guys just a couple of days ago. And so I want to talk into what we were talking about. What I mentioned was the Cuties movie on Netflix and how I'd seen a lot of outrage about it. And it kind of just sparked my interest to go investigate, right? And go and do my own research, watch the movie, listen to an interview with the director, just kind of ascertain like why that movie was made. And, to try and just cut through the outrage and get to the facts and actually look at it as a way of, tackling the actual issues at hand rather than creating a whole lot of outrage and anger and hysteria, but leaving people really uninformed. So if you have watched the movie Cuties on Netflix, I'd love to hear your opinion. If you haven't, and maybe you don't know what the hell we're talking about, I invite you to, I'm going to kind of dive into it a little bit now with you guys, but I invite you to watch the last Facebook Live that I did a couple of days ago. And I'd love to hear your thoughts, or maybe you've seen some different people maybe on your Facebook feed who have been putting out a petition for people to sign to take the movie off Netflix, right? And to get it out of society's eyes, right? Out of our viewpoint. So for all sorts of different reasons, but let me dive into this one with you guys. So let me know where in the world you're tuning in from. Drop me some comments. And again, play along while you're at home. I absolutely love getting to make this more interactive. So it's not just me talking at you guys, we're having a conversation. So let's get into it. So today's topic is outrage culture, and I'm going to unpack and define this for you guys. Blocks transformation. Okay, so what I'm going to talk to you guys about today is the difference between outrage culture and then people who are genuinely outraged, who've informed themselves and then they're genuinely outraged, and then also how to be calm in all situations so that we can actually tackle the real issues at hand rather than create whole new issues that take us further away from transforming where we began, right? Like what the problem was in the beginning. So I'm going to unpack this one for you guys and give you some examples and bring it back to where I'm at in terms of my research with that Cuties movie, right? Just my experience with that. So just to define right for us all now, you've probably heard of outrage culture. It's kind of thrown around a little bit. We're kind of said to be living in an outrage culture right now in societal history, right? But it's a colloquial definition that I'm going to give you, which defines outrage culture as when people play the victim card and bend over backwards to be as offended as possible when they really aren't, okay? Now, I'm going to differentiate again, like when we reflect on this movie, about there's legitimate outrage and then there's a lot of what I'm seeing, which is outrage culture. And how I know it's outrage culture is because when I have questioned, why people think the way that they do, why are they so outraged, what's been going on for them, most of them, in regards to this same movie, haven't seen the movie, right? They just heard somebody say how outraged they were about it and gave a kind of synopsis, about what it was, and then these people are just totally outraged and just willing to just go boom, like get it out, right? That's very much outrage culture, and we can look at that on a multitude of different angles. We can look at it from the human need as a sense of belonging. We can look at it as to how anger, affects our brains, right? How the emotion of anger can really affect our brain and our state of being and make us much more righteous and much more looking for that moral superiority, right? Trying to fit in with that. But basically, I want to talk about it in terms of this movie, right? So as you guys know, a few days ago, I just mentioned this. And so the Cuties movie, why people were getting outraged by it was it depicts very young girls around the age of 11 going through, like, the people who are outraged say they are over-sexualized and it shouldn't be allowed on our screens, okay? And so on face value, you could think, yeah, we don't want to like over-sexualize our young children, right? And we don't want to put that out there, right? But we have to look deeper, right? And I'm not going to go into the depths of what I did in the in my rant on it a couple of days ago, but basically now I've actually seen the movie. And yeah, given that there are different things in that movie that don't feel all that comfortable, right? But what my experience of it was, and you guys can go and watch it for yourselves and get your own experience, but to me, it really did depict that section of, journey from child into, adolescence. And I actually could relate to sections of it from my own childhood, from my own time at, that age of, say, 11 years old. And I can look at it and, what came up for me was personally, back then, my very best friend and I, like what was all the rage at that time was the Spice Girls, right? And so we loved the Spice Girls and we were forever dressing up as the Spice Girls, right? Like I was always Baby Spice, Emma Bunting, and my best friend was always Posh Spice, right? Victoria Beckham now, yeah. So basically, we would dress like that. We had big platform shoes. I think I just wore like, dresses and pink dresses and things like that. And, and I remember my best friend wearing really short skirts and little midriff tops, right? Now, we were not trying to be over-sexualized, right? We were emulating what we were seeing in those that we admired and adored, right? It was more of a friendship sort of thing, right? It wasn't us trying to be sexualized. But we as children, as we're growing up, we as human beings, we emulate what we see in the world, right? And so we can look at today's culture and we can look at what that cycle of our humanness is going through, and we can look at the kind of culture that, those 11-year-olds are growing up in right now. It's different to when I was growing up as an 11-year-old and I had the Spice Girls, right? But then it's different to my mum growing up as an 11-year-old, right? And not having the access as much to, to the rest of the world and, these, what our current young children have access to, right? I mean, there's a lot of hypersexualization in the industry of just social media and music and, movies and all the rest of it, right? All of our media. And so to me, when I watched that movie, I didn't think, oh my God, they're trying to, over-sexualize these young kids and they're taking advantage of them and all this sort of stuff. I just thought this is like a mirror for our society to look at what actually happens. I haven't personally seen, I'm sure there's other movies out there, but I haven't personally seen that particular, actually I guarantee there's a ton of movies out there like this, but I don't really remember like too many that have depicted that particular age bracket, probably because of the outrage that it could potentially enlist in the public, right? And I actually deeply resonated with it, and I could relate it to what young girls and boys as well, but young girls is what the movie was around, are kind of faced with during the era that they're growing up in, right? And and I looked at it and I wasn't outraged. There were definitely scenes in that movie where I was so grateful that they didn't go any further, right? Like, particularly when there were a couple of instances where the young girls, used kind of their budding sexuality to kind of try and get what they wanted, right? To get out of the grip of a security guard when they did the wrong thing, right? Or one of the main girls stole a phone, and the guy whose phone it was, she kind of tried to use her what she's seeing in movies, or what she's seeing in women getting their way. She tried to kind of use her sexuality to get that, not in a understanding of what she's doing kind of way, but just in a replication and emulation of what she sees, right? And without having the emotional intelligence or consciousness around what was really going on, right? And I'm very grateful in the movie that these men didn't take advantage of that, right? But I think that the director did a really good job at shining light on something that's less comfortable for us as a society to address. And then I can see, so that's my personal opinion. Not my favorite movie, like not one I'm going to watch again, but I do think that it does highlight some issues that require some focus. And I can see how there's a few different people at play right now. There are the very open-minded people who are going out there and they're researching, and they're not just falling with anybody's opinion. They're just going to go do it themselves. Like, I don't want you guys to just like fall in line with what I say about watching a movie. I would prefer if you guys go and seek the answers for yourself, right? And the same thing is for those people who are seeing people get really outraged. It's like, well, there's part of our biology that gets caught up in that, which I'll talk about in a minute. But you've got to go and inform yourself and be your own leader, right? And I'm seeing a lot of people, like I mentioned, get super outraged, be doing no research whatsoever, not even being able to watch the movie because they're so outraged already, right? Because of what other people have said about it, where they haven't even checked their facts, right? They're just going based on that opinion. And then I'm seeing also, so that's kind of the outrage culture, right? A sense of belonging, and actually, it actually becomes adrenaline inducing, cortisol racing, and actually addictive to get outraged, right? So there's an element of that, and also a sense of belonging, because when people get outraged in our culture, all right, and I'm not just saying it's about this movie, people getting outraged about everything all of the time, right? There's lots about politics, and there's, all sorts of things. There are lots of outrage, right? And but what I want to just hone in on is there's a difference between being genuinely and well-informed and, outraged about something, right? That total anger, like it's a really strong reaction of anger or shock or indignation, right? That's what outrage is. But then there's also outrage, where that's kind of the difference that we want to look at, right? Are people getting just caught up in the outrage culture and just going with the flow and just trying to belong, right? And getting triggered by that and then just falling into outrage so they can't even think properly? Or are they well-informed and they're very outraged about something? And I would want to say this to some of those people, because they're very well-intentioned, but basically, I see this oftentimes, and I don't know what you guys think about this as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But sometimes people are trying to protect themselves and others from darkness, right? And they've got very good intentions, right? They just want to go, you know what, that movie is bad. I saw it and it's bad, and it shouldn't be on television because what if pedophiles are watching that, right? And I don't like the camera angles on these young girls, right? So they're getting outraged, right, from this potentially well-intentioned place. But what's happening is They think that they just need to protect themselves and society from the darkness, right? Instead of going, you know what, or instead of realizing we must shine light on the darkness so that it can be healed and transformed. Because if we just try to protect ourselves from the darkness in society, which is inevitable, then we end up leaving the actual issues unaddressed, right? So for example, using this movie as the example, if we just go, you know what, I'm so worried about pedophiles seeing these young girls wearing skimpy outfits and dancing. I'm so worried about that. And my mindset is that other young girls are going to see this and then they're going to replicate that. You know, they're not copying 11-year-old girls on one, narrow French movie, right? They're replicating and emulating the whole world at large and what's in the media's eye, right? But basically, if we get caught up like that, what happens is we end up protecting ourselves from that. Like, say that movie gets taken off Netflix and nobody else gets to watch it, for instance. But have you actually resolved the issue that the director was attempting to shine some light on and put a mirror up to us and go, hey, like, this isn't healthy, right? This is what's happening. This is the truth of the situation. What are we going to do about it, right? It raises awareness, right? But if we shut it down and we try and protect ourselves from it, we've left the very issues on the table, left unaddressed. That's not going to make the fact that growing up in a society that we do today, like there's a lot of hypersexualization and unhealthy dynamics at play, it's not going to take away any of that. Right? It's just going to so-called protect people from seeing that. But do you know what? I actually see that as it's taking away the spotlight from the help and the healing that could be occurring should we just place our attention and our focus on that in a calm rather than outraged perspective so that we can actually transform the situation rather than just have it perpetuate under the surface, right? And it's interesting, like what I was kind of thinking about this morning, which was, I was like, it's so fascinating to me that the outrage for this movie is actually perpetuating the very problem that these people leave unaddressed. You see, in the movie, what I see is that it shows us just our human nature of attempting to belong, right? We all want to belong. We all, succumb to societal pressures, right? We want to, we're wired to follow whatever the social norms are of the group that we want to be a part of, right? And we have a total fear of rejection from our peers. Now, that's what I saw in the movie. I saw these little girls, in particular the main character, just trying to belong. She just wanted to belong. She just wanted to be accepted. She just wanted to be part of something, right? And so she was emulating what she thought, though, that would get her there, that would get her the attention, that get her the friendships, that get her the connections, right? And that's what it was kind of highlighting, right? And just not knowing who she was, right? She's just this little girl and emulating all these ways of being to get the attention and the belonging and the approval and, step away from being rejected, right? And what I was seeing was outrage culture, and the outrage around this movie is actually doing the same thing. Because when you see somebody, say a friend of yours, get outraged about something, right? So I'm just using this movie as an example. I'm by no means thinking this is the only place that this happens, right? This is a minor little example, right? But say you've got a bunch of your friends on your social media who are getting outraged about this movie Cuties and they want it taken off. They want you to sign a petition to take it off. You, on a very human level, you may very much feel as though you're going to follow through on that moral superiority. You're going to, even on an unconscious level, you want to, as we do as human beings who need to belong, we tend to gravitate towards those situations where there's these, it's kind of like an unspoken social contract that we're signing, right? We're like, oh, there's this moral superiority that a friend puts out there, and we're like, yes, I'm moral like you, or I think the same ways as you do. Please let me belong. Please don't reject me, right? On a subconscious level. And we actually follow along mindlessly for a sense of belonging, and also coupled with the fact that when human beings get outraged about something, it actually can trigger the same physiological responses in us, like I mentioned earlier, which can, get this adrenaline going, cortisol levels rising. It can become addictive in nature to do so as well, right? That's why you'll see a lot of times, people are attracted to controversial topics, and people will go, I've seen so many times people go, I just came here for the comment section, right? Because they're getting that adrenaline and the cortisol of of the fight that's going on, and that's what the outrage and the black and white and the you against me, right? It's part of human nature, right? And it's part of our safety and security in our belongingness. But what we need to do is we need to transcend those lower levels of consciousness and, not throw them away. Just understand our human nature. Just go, hang on a minute. Am I following through with this because I'm getting caught up in the social contract here that I feel like obligated to, or as a sense of belonging? Or am I going to take a deep breath and then just go, all right, I know that this is part of human nature, would be for me to follow through on that. But what if I was a more well-informed human being, right? And what if I was really making my choices be authentically driven, right? Be intelligently discerned, right? And when we can do that, we become human beings who don't just perpetuate same old issues and underlying problems, but we actually address and handle and transform and heal the real issues that we're faced with. So again, that was my kind of rant on this topic for you guys, but I really do hope that it does support you guys, because we've got to, even if we're outraged from a place of being informed and we're not just following suit and trying to belong, right? We still need to shift out of this sense for self-protection, right? To shut off the darkness. Don't go there. Just turn our backs on the darkness. And we actually need to shift from hiding from that darkness to shining light upon it with strength, right? So that we have an opportunity for healing, right? Instead of self-protecting, we need to focus more on collective healing. And in order to do that, we need to shine light on the darkness. We can't just turn our back on it. So when movies like this one come into the forefront of our, outrage culture, it's a good idea to look at that and go, why does this trigger so many of us? What are we so afraid of? What issues are truly underlying this? And how can we utilize it to transform as a collective, to heal as a collective, rather than try and self-protect and, turn our back on the darkness, right? That doesn't actually help to heal or transform the issue at hand. All it does is actually perpetuate it in these really weird ways. So that's my message for you guys. I'd love to check in. Just wanted to wrap that one up for you guys, because when I did that message for you guys a couple of days ago, I did say I was going to watch that movie, and I did have a bunch of you saying that you wanted to hear my thoughts on that once I'd actually watched the movie. And so I hope I've done a good job at just articulating what I feel is of benefit. It's not necessarily getting caught up, I'm not even getting caught up in the movie at hand. I'm using it for a couple of different bigger societal problems that are more intelligent to be addressed. Number one, outrage culture and not being informed and just trying to belong, and how that actually becomes a pretty deadly virus in our society, right? Where we're just, projecting all our outrage, and then it triggers other people's anger, and then they get righteous, right? And then they want to project moral superiority, and then they just want to belong or feel superior to and divide, people. And then we've just kind of totally lost track of the actual issue that created the apparent outrage in the beginning, right? And also, looking at what the director was trying to portray in her movie, Cuties, which is a very real depiction of what our younger generations are being faced with along the journey we've all gone through as adults, which is that, very necessary part of our journey to belong, to be accepted, and to emulate what we see in the world around us, so that ultimately we can be more conscious. We can take a movie like that, like it's a mirror into how we're operating as a race, as humans in our society, right? And we can go, whoa, like kids emulate what they see from us, right? And so if kids are, hypersexualizing themselves, not even knowing it, we can look at, how about we take a look at how they're getting those images? Like, what are they seeing, right? What are we portraying for them? So there's a lot in it, right? That's much more intelligent than just signing a petition and trying to self-protect from the darkness, rather than shine light on it with consciousness and actually have an opportunity to collectively heal and transform, so that future generations benefit from this, rather than just lock away the current generation with a lock and key and don't even want to look at it because it's too apparently dark, right? So, anyway, ranting again. You know me. I've got Bill in the house, and Brian and Cameron and Tapasvi. I always butcher your name. Sorry about that. And Brian. It made me feel uncomfortable at times to watch the Cuties movie, but it also felt that it did reflect in some ways how a society is these days. I think it was a movie meant to get people talking and having strong feelings and conversations. Absolutely. I love that, Brian. And I so appreciate that you watched the movie, right? And I can see, in our society as well, how it'd probably be even more uncomfortable for you as a man to watch a movie like that, right? So I applaud you for actually educating yourself and watching the movie. And then, there's no right or wrong opinion about it. It's just what's true for you, right? And where's that coming from, right? And so I agree with you. There were definitely uncomfortable situations and scenes in that movie. But you know what? It did, exactly like you said, get people talking and having feelings and having conversations, right? But where it's not helpful is when people just get outraged and want to close it down, because they're not actually seeing the real opportunity for conversation and insight that we could have, and then moving forward, what we could do about it. So absolutely love you sharing that, Brian. Thank you so much. And Bobby's here as well. And Rutherford, good to see you. And Chewy, I don't know how to say your name, but you're from the USA, and I love having you here. And Oaken and George and Brian and Tracy and Dean, awesome to see each and every one of you. And Dennis, good to see you, my friend. How did we create this, and how do we repair the need for children to emulate this? I feel the same way about our violent movies. How did we let it come mainstream and become normal for kids? We need positive options long-term to fix the mess while understanding what's here now. Boom. Love it, Dennis. Absolutely. That's exactly how we need to be viewing these situations. And I actually have been experimenting with this in my own life, in terms of what I'm watching and seeing how it affects me. And coupled with some learning I've been doing from an amazing neuroscientist. Oh my God. What's his name? Andrew Hubbard or something. I'll have to look it up for you guys. I'll drop you a link. But I've been listening to a couple of interviews with him and hearing how he talks about the brain and about how our, the addictive chemicals that and hormones that get generated from the different things that we're seeing and viewing and interacting with and all sorts of things. So it's very, very interesting, and I love your perspective and what you've shared on what we need to focus on there, Dennis. And basically, just to give you a little insight on this, I've been watching the Game of Thrones series, right? Because it's pretty old now for a lot of people. Like, most people were into it like a long time ago. I never got into it. I don't generally watch that much TV or series or shows. And basically, I've been talking to a couple of people. I think my brother mentioned it to me like a couple of weeks ago, and he's like, "Oh, I just got into it for the first time and it's really good." And I thought, you know what? I do need to sometimes switch off a little bit from all my thinking and stuff, so I'll just get it. And I've been going through it, and I have really been noticing how much it impacts my dreams. I'm kind of using myself as a bit of an experiment right now, because in that series, it's rated R, high impact violence. There's a lot of rape. It's not the nicest kind of stuff, and not probably the best, healthiest sort of stuff that you would want to feed your mind with, right? But I'm actually using it to see how it actually affects me, and I am noticing some different things. So I'll report back more, but also we want to look at that for sure. And and also how our addictive processes are, how they go about playing out, where, we're wired that something that created, say, a lot of dopamine within us, next time we need something even more extreme, right? So in terms of, seeing a violent movie, and then that gave you this kind of dopamine hit or whatever and got adrenaline going, and then next time you might watch something the same and it's like it doesn't even have that effect. So people are unconsciously attracted to higher impact violence. The exact same things happen with pornography, right? We've heard about that, where people might start watching pornography that's kind of quite tame, and then it's not giving them the same response, so they go more and more extreme, right, with that sort of thing. And it's no different with like a big one right now that I've heard of doing my research with this Cuties movie. What was I watching? I was watching a documentary on social media and its effects, again on Netflix. I don't know what it was called, actually, sorry. I'll find it if you guys want me to. Just write me a comment. But basically, they were talking about also the effects of Snapchat and filters on particularly for young kids, because young kids, have been growing up with these filters, and they get all this admiration and the likes and whatever on social media for having using a filter, right? And then they look at themselves in the mirror and they're wanting plastic surgery to make themselves look more like they do when they have a filter on, right? And so that's a very real thing, right, that we would want to actually look at, right? So anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here, but I so appreciate your perspective there, Dennis. And Joshua's here as well. And Dennis, I appreciate you. And Brian, we probably shouldn't be glorifying some of what was in the movie. Very true. I don't want to glorify any of it. I just want to see it with realism, right? I just want to go, nothing is all good or all bad. There's different elements of it. We could debate and argue all day long about whether it was depicted in a very good way, or, you know, whatever the director did, or some of the scenes in the movie. We could argue all day long, but, you know, we're getting away from the actual issue at hand, right? And we've got to ask ourselves, why are we debating it so much? Why do we need to have this group of people and that group of people? Why can't we come together as human beings who are tackling the actual issue that movie, whether you like it or not, you know, is highlighting for all of us, right? So I think that's, yeah, well said. We shouldn't be glorifying it. I don't want to see it again, you know, but it's just, we got to be informed, and we got to look below the outrage so that we can come with, you know, calm realism about the real issues at hand. So love that, Brian. And Judy's here, and AJ, hello to you, and Shannon, and Mance is here as well. Good to see each and every one of you guys. So I really hope today's message, it was a little bit ranty of me just kind of articulating some of my own personal viewpoints just from watching that movie now and being a little bit more informed. And to me, I think, yeah, that we've definitely got the issue that it highlights in terms of growing up in the culture that we do, and just knowing that children emulate what they see. So they're really just a mirror into how we're operating as a society, right? And not even knowing what they're doing. And then also on top of that, the other issue I'm seeing, which is major, is this whole outrage culture that takes us away from the actual issues at hand and creates the division that I spoke about a couple of days ago with you guys, instead of this unity around the actual issues and what we're going to actually do about it. So I hope this is of value to each and every one of you guys, and I want to thank each and every one of you for showing up live today and for contributing to the conversation. You are so appreciated as usual, and I'm going to look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. So as always, just wanting to let you guys know to go out there and live authentically, right? Don't try and belong and fit in, right? Just try and just discover more of who you are and align with that, right? That's where your freedom and your fulfillment resides. And then also go out there and love deeply. Get off the surface, right? And actually be able to build your ability and your strength to be vulnerable, right? To be all of who you are, and to allow others to see all of that and to see them as well, right? That's real intimacy. And then finally, contribute meaningfully and purposefully, right? You have gifts on offer. You know, a lot of our potential is in our pain, right? That we get to actually move through, all of our challenges that we break through. Like, you know, there's a lot in your journey that could support other people. You don't have to do it for a career, right? But just that's, at the end of the day, every single human being wants to know that their lives mattered, that they were able to make some sort of impact, some sort of meaningful impact. And whether that's just to the people closest to you or on a larger scale, you know, just know that to put some focus on how you're contributing purposefully and meaningfully so that you can be the fulfilled human being that you truly have the capacity to be. And just to say hi to Werner and Melly and David, who are just joining. I hope you guys catch the recording, get a ton of value from today's message, because I'm about to sign off and I am sending you guys all of my love. I'll see you soon. Much love.